Hello, welcome to round 9 coverage of Pro Tour Amonkhet. We're going to kick things off right away with two 8-0 drafters. Let's go down to the floor and see what they have in store for us here today. Hello and welcome to round 10 coverage of Pro Tour Amonkhet. I'm Brian David Marshall, joined in the booth by Hall of Famer Luis Scott Vargas. Luis, we got two 8-0 players here in the feature match area. What's in store for us in this round? What are these guys playing?
So Chris did end up playing blue-green ramp, splashing white for 2 copies of Prepare to Fight. And he's playing against Pierre Dagen, playing white-blue, pretty controlling build, actually. He's got multiple copies of Hieroglyphic Illumination. He's got a lot of low drops, but he's going to just try to curve out and then cast a bunch of draw twos, and he's got an Edifice of Authority, some Avid Initiates that he can flash back. So it's going to be interesting because neither deck is the super aggressive deck that we've kind of seen and heard a lot of people talk about. You're not seeing a lot of 1-drops here. You're not seeing Trial of Solidarity, any cards like that. On the other hand, both players have a lot of cards that can affect the board early, so we should see a lot of interaction in this match.
Okay. Going around the rest of the feature match area, Kazuki Fujimura versus Gerard Fabiano, Oliver Ox versus Eric Froelich, and Christian Calcano versus Hall of Famer Shota Yasuoka. Also Hall of Famer Eric Froelich, I should mention. But there you get a look at Pierre Dagen of France. He's a member of Team Opportunity and making the most of his here to pull his team up in the rankings. There you get a look at Chris Fennell, the Gator Mage, member of Team Lingering Souls. And he's on that, when you're pulling up teams, he's on that list of people you think about when you need a limited expert. Island is the play for Pierre Dagen. Start things off. And what was the final count on Chris Fennell in terms of like fighters? What's his fighting roster look like?
He's got this Angler Drake, which is fairly large. He's got an Ornery Kudu, and he's got a Colossopede. So he does not have a whole lot of large creatures. He might be in a little bit of trouble, when it comes down to targets for Cartouche of Strength. On the other hand, Pierre's deck has a lot of fairly small creatures.
Top Crop Skirmisher and Devoted Crop Mate, not going in the higher weight classes here. There you see the Vizier of Tumbling Sands on turn 3 from Chris Fennell. No green. And that's sort of a deceptive mana ramp spell there, right?
Yeah, because it can untap any permanent, it can, of course, untap lands. And, yeah, if Chris has a land next turn, he's up to 5 mana, though. He's on Triple Island, indicating that he might not have drawn any forests here.
Yeah, you see him with that Cartouche of Strength hanging out. So, Devoted Crop Mate gets in. No need to exert. There's nothing in the graveyard for him to return. And Those Who Serve comes down next. So a little bit of a motley assembly. Oh, wow. We're going to ramp into a turn 4 Glyph Keeper here.
Well, if you're going to be mono blue, casting Glyph Keeper is a pretty good way to, make up for that.
People will joke about playing against this card, say they have to kill it 4 times. Because, you often have to use a real spell to get to use a real spell on it. And then it comes back with Embalm.
Yeah, this is a very hard to deal with card.
Of course, you can't always attack your 3-power creature into it. And Chris Fennell cannot block, and he falls down to 12 here. And there's Edifice of Authority, and that's a recurring way for Pierre to be able to target the Glyph Keeper if he should find something like a compulsory rest that he wants to put on it.
And Pierre a little short on mana right now, even though Chris also short on colors, so it'd be interesting to see who can actually deploy more relevant spells.
Finds his splash in the white and is able to play a Labyrinth Guardian. Didn't really need the white for that. And now, interesting though, we talked about this a little bit during the draft. You would think like, okay, well, if he wanted to untap that Glyph Keeper to keep it active, to keep it on defense, he can't do that, right? That ability would get countered if he tried to use his Vizier on his own Glyph Keeper.
Yeah, Glyph Keeper does not discriminate. It counters, any sort of targeting ability. So, but Pierre does not have a great attack here. He can attack, and Devoted Cropmate can trade for Labyrinth Guardian, at which point the Labyrinth Guardian will just get embalmed. He could attack with all 3 creatures, and then Labyrinth Guardian eats the Tall Crop Skirmisher, and Chris falls to 5. That doesn't seem too unreasonable, especially since Devoted Cropmate can bring back Tall Crop Skirmisher, and it also has Embalm itself. But Pierre may want to wait to Alpha Strike next turn.
He does, and plays another Tall Crop Skirmisher after cycling Shimmerscale Drake to find that 4th land. Now, we talked about the Vizier. We talked about this during the draft. The Vizier, if a green mana source should find its way into Chris's hand, he could actually use the Vizier to let him put the Cartouche Strength on the Glyph Keeper.
Yeah, and that is a play that I think we could see happening here, though. Chris being short on green, he's got 5 cards in his hand he can't cast right now, which is going to make things pretty difficult for him, especially since Pierre now can attack with everything, and he can use Vizier of Deferment to blink one of his own creatures, to exile one of his own creatures, have him come back if it were to lose in combat.
Only a Labyrinth Guardian. See Pierre reading the Glyph Keeper. He's like, can you untap this? No, probably not.
Pierre also has access to Aven Wind Guide, which right now is not adding a whole lot of extra bonuses, but if he starts to embalm those Tall Crop Skirmishers, they'll get Flying and
I was
Vigilance.
just say, makes you a lot more willing to just throw those Skirmishers into the red zone. But instead, he's going to cast Hieroglyphic Illumination and draw 2 cards. Alternate casting cost of Hieroglyphic Illumination.
And Pierre's doing a good job drawing out of his mana problems with cycling Shimmerscale Drake, casting the Illumination, whereas Chris, on the other hand, is not drawing any extra cards under any means and still stuck without any green mana.
But might be able to turn this game, the tide of this game, pretty quickly if he finds a forest.
He certainly could.
Combat.
Okay, you see, still has that opportunity to use the Edifice. And again, Pierre's like, let me read that one more time.
And Chris's army of 1/3s and 2/3s is stopping, well, Pierre's army of 2/1s.
Okay, so gets his first brick counter on the Edifice of Authority. Really could only use it defensively the first few times to prevent someone from attacking, but becomes kind of interesting once you have those 3 brick counters on it, because you can prevent something from blocking, but then it still can't attack back for a little while. You get a whole turn cycle of nerfing that creature. Yeah, just a fistful of green cards here for Chris Fennell. And a couple of them look like, they're not really exciting green cards to draw in the, late game with your mana fully developed. Weaver of Currents and Oashra Cultivator, not super exciting at this point.
Playing the turn 7 Oashra Cultivator once you've drawn your green source, not really the way you're trying to win the games.
Now he draws a Spring to Mind.
Similar. He could even cast Mind if he could get that into his graveyard, but hopefully he does not do that by discarding the hand size. That's not the way you want to do that.
He does have Seeker of Insight, so he could actually, get it into his graveyard pretty easily if he could cast a spell.
Yeah, that'd be pretty cool. Unfortunately, all his spells are still green, but if he draws a blue spell, that could work out.
This is an interesting interaction. We see Edifice of Authority, activated on the Glyph Keeper, and now the Vizier of Deferment is able to blink the Glyph Keeper out for the rest of this turn. So the ability from the Edifice was countered, but that opened up the opportunity for the Vizier to do something and get an extra creature on the board.
And that prevents Pierre from dying, though at this point Chris has a pretty big advantage just because Pierre is one shot away from losing to Glyph Keeper. And note that putting the brick counter on the Edifice is part of the resolution, so he doesn't actually even get a second brick. You could say
he bricked on bricks.
Yeah.
Interesting that we both arrived there at the same
time. Well, one of the key features of us being in the booth together is we're going to race for some of these. So it's just a sign of good taste, honestly.
All right, now it looks like here comes some attacks from Pierre. And again, he does have that Aven Wind Guide in hand. He's been holding that for a couple of turns. And I guess looking to set up a a situation where he's got a couple of tokens, yeah. And Chris obliges. He blocks both of them. But now he's got to play the Avon Wind Guide in chump block mode.
And it's a shame for Pierre because if he was able to get these top crop skirmishers embalmed while the Wind Guide was still in play, he could have a pretty steady stream of chump blockers, the tokens that have flying and vigilance, but he's not very close to that, and like you mentioned, he's going to be forced to block with the Wind Guide here.
And here comes Chris with what would be a lethal hit from the Glyph Keeper. Double checks.
Is Chris going to win this game without playing a single forest? Pierre knows what colors Chris is.
Well, you know what? He actually only knows what colors are in Chris's deck. He knows what cards Chris drafted, but they don't actually see the full deck list. They actually get to look at the card pool. So he could be like, did he just build it blue-white somehow? Yeah, I don't think he'll really. I think he has to assume the green's there, though. So Embalm on the Avon Wind Guide. That buys him another turn of chump blocking. See, players will, at the table, often take the card out of the sleeve to represent an embalmed creature, but they'll get the real token over there for however long it's in play.
Yeah, man, I have 7 uncastables in my hand, so...
Yeah, well, Chris just basically said I am playing green.
This is the best future match ever. Sure.
Yeah, Pierre saying it took one card to beat me.
All right. There is Hieroglyphic Illumination, and that's going to be it for Pierre Dagen, who could not deal with the Glyph Keeper, something I think a lot of teams found in their limited play testing. There you see Chris showing him the forest. So that's game 1 here in the feature match area. We will be back with more Magic right after this.
Check out Amonkhet Booster Draft Leagues on Magic Online. Draft anytime, play anytime. Available now. For more info, visit mtgo.com.
Up your game with Ultra Pro Magic the Gathering accessories. Find the best Magic art on card sleeves, deck boxes, playmats, and more. Visit ultrapro.com to learn more and find a retailer near you.
Welcome back to Round 9 coverage of Pro Tour Amonkhet here on Day 2. Brian David Marshall, joined by Luis Scott Vargas. I'll give you a little bit of recap of what's going on some of the other tables here. Christian Calcano of MTG Bent Card is down a game against the Hall of Famer Shota Yasuoka. Shota Yasuoka, of course, of Team Musashi. Japan's Kazuyuki Fujimura is up one game over Gerard Fabiano, and Oliver Ox and Eric Froelich still deeply embroiled in game one. Oh, and as soon as I said that, Efro took game one right there. So we're just going into game twos all the way across the board. And, of course, Pierre Dagen, we just saw go up a game on camera against Chris Fennell as the players draw their opening hands here for game two.
Yep.
See, Chris, you see that Pierre has taken a mulligan as he scries and keeps a card on top of his library. All right, and we are underway.
Pretty good chance that Pierre cycles Hieroglyphic Illumination here. When you're on two lands, that is how you get to your fourth.
I mean, if it's in my opening hand and I open on an island, it doesn't matter how many lands I'm holding. I almost always cycle that. There's a forest for Chris Fennell, and that's going to feel great for him. He didn't see any of those until he was shuffling for game two last time.
Well, he didn't need green mana to beat Pierre game one, but I think that Chris's start is just almost strictly superior to what his start was last time because he has the option of curving out. He still has that Glyph Keeper in hand, and the fact that Pierre isn't playing anything right now, Chris has started the game and he's already at a pretty sizable advantage just based on the fact that Pierre played nothing his first three turns and just has 3 islands in play.
Yeah, Brink plays an Ornery Kudu here on turn 3, puts the counter on the Labyrinth Guardian, and there is a Naga Oracle for Pierre Dagen, who is, of course, as you said, down a game.
Naga Oracle does stop Chris's attacks. He, at this point, can't get any damage through, but I still think Pierre is in a little bit of trouble. He didn't have the fastest start, and he mulligans, so he's already down a card, and Chris has that Glyph Keeper in hand, which is not clear whether Pierre's deck can easily...
Ever deal with it?
Yeah, just because it's so hard to target, and it's so hard to deal with, and it hits so hard. Like, it hits for 5 a turn, so it's just a 4-turn clock. He
does have an impeccable timing, but he would require that timing to be very much impeccable.
4. 5. 13.
So Cartouche of Strength comes down, clears the Naga out of the way, and Chris Fennell is romping all over the place here. Pierre Dagen down to 13.
Now that Ornery Kudu is a 4/5, there's just not a whole lot that Pierre can put in its way that survives. Blue-White's not known for its gigantic stats.
Yeah, Cartouche of Strength especially shines in a matchup like this.
Sure.
There's an Anointed Priest, sure, says Chris Fennell.
Well, that turn was not particularly strong for Pierre, and if Chris has any sort of reasonable follow-up here, he's going to be significantly far ahead.
In with both, the Priest gets in the way of the Labyrinth Guardian, but
It's actually 9? 9, sorry.
he's falling down to 9 here.
Thanks anyway.
I do what I can.
I'm not sure how far our advantage bar goes, but I assume a Glyph Keeper would bury the needle here.
It would.
Here is Vizier of Tumbling Sands,
It's very nice of you.
and that's going to get canceled.
All right.
Interesting.
So Pierre likely brought in cancel for. It looks like he's got the one main deck cancel, and he would like to counter Glyph Keeper with that, but countering Vizier of Tumbling Sands just because Pierre's in a position where he just doesn't have enough mana to not cast cancel on anything Chris casts, so he was pretty much forced into it.
Plays the 3/4 Shimmer Scale Drake there.
These decks are kind of funny. Pierre's is white, blue, and Balm. He's got a lot of Top Crop Skirmishers, Devoted Cropmate, Anointed Priest, but he hasn't had very aggressive draws. And Chris, while nominally being green, blue, ramp, doesn't have that much high end. But what he does have, he keeps drawing, and Glyph Keeper is gonna put Pierre into quite a difficult position.
Yeah, I mean, Pierre needs to have two different ways to deal with that. He is at 5, needs some way to target that will fizzle, and then have to have probably his one impeccable timing here.
And even then, it's going to be hard to hope to dodge any sort of trick Chris has, or to play around potential Embalm shenanigans.
Okay, Embalm brings back a True Heart Duelist. Yeah, well, I wasn't thinking a long-term plan there. I was just thinking, how does Pierre not die? All right, and then.
Oh, this is exactly the sort of situation where Floodwaters is brutal.
Wow, Floodwaters seals the deal, but sends 2 creatures back to Pierre's hand, and Chris Fennell is 9-0 to start the tournament. The best start he's ever had to a Pro Tour in his career, and a great start for Team Lingering Souls here. You know, one tournament result is such a big part of your team's success.
We saw Chris and Pierre talking at the table afterwards. Chris boarded in a Slither Blade just to trade for one of Pierre's 3 Talk Crop Skirmishers.
Oh, that's funny. Interesting, ironically, for blockability.
Yes.
Its ability to block. All right, so now we are looking in here. I think we're going to check in on a match, and it looks like this is Gerard Fabiano and Kazuyuki Fujimura. And this is pretty early on in game 2. Fujimura is up a game here. They used to get a look at Gerard. Plays Miasmic Mummy. Discarding Insult to Injury.
That is... he then cast Illusory Wrappings. So we had a turn, just to be clear, there's a Naga Vitalist in play. There's a Miasmic Mummy next to it. Insult to Injury was the card chose to discard. The next card that went on stack was Illusory Wrappings.
I mean, if you had a pick from any pod, you know, the player most likely to be playing the Gift of Paradise deck, you'd pick Gerard Fabiano.
Oh, definitely. It's just the odds that those 4 cards, saw play in the same turn are, well, let's just say I did not expect to see that sequence. But we've got a Planeswalker on the table now. Nissa Steward Developments, which we're going to see how Gerard makes use of that.
Starts it on 4 loyalty. And scries 2. Starts it on 3 loyalty, I should say, and then scries 2. That is Cruel Reality, but it gets countered there.
And you see the advantage bar swinging wildly as Cruel Reality gets countered by Reduced to Rubble, which is unfortunate because Cruel Reality for Kazuaki, because Cruel Reality is incredibly powerful. It would devour all Gerard's creatures, then it's Planeswalker, and then eventually Gerard.
A card I haven't had a chance to play with yet in any of my drafts. Seen it a couple times, but I haven't pulled the trigger on it.
Yeah, same.
Gerard, of course, with his head to his forehead, thinking, how did I not get that Cruel Reality for my deck?
Gerard would certainly enjoy playing with that card.
So scries again. Nissa ticks up to 6. That's the magic number here for next turn.
Though with Fujimura at 20, Gerard is not super likely to just fire off the Nissa Ultimate, but having the option to be able to do so is powerful.
But he is going to lock down 3 lands here. Says those are on tap next turn. Plays that out of his yard. And casts Quarry Hauler.
Watchful Naga.
Watchful Naga, okay.
Trying to peck in for a card here, maybe, if you can. But Gerard, having Nissa in play, ticking up, not being threatened, and being able to add to his board,
yeah,
it puts him significantly ahead here just because he's scrying, drawing extra cards.
I was going to say, he's curating the top of his deck here, too,
Yeah.
right?
And when your 5-color deck draws its mana, then its spells tend to be more powerful on average. That's why you went with the mana inconsistency.
Now, wouldn't you just fire off that? I guess because he's still got a flyer. I was going to say, the insult to injury means 1 activation from Nissa could be fatal.
It could, depending on how Gerard can set it up here. He can flashback the injury part and deal 2 to one of Fujimura's creatures and 2 to Fujimura. So Gerard could clear a path here.
So he's going to take out the Death Toucher here.
You 18?
And now in comes Miasmic Mummy.
Exert.
And he's going to exert for a card, like you said. Seeker is going to step in front of the Mummy. And I guess Fujimura is not eager to throw away his flyer
Strike.
at this point because he can eat a little block a Nissa activation.
It's kind of unfortunate for Gerard that he keeps scrying, yet he never puts any cards on the bottom. So it's like he's not getting full value out of his scry. Just his cards are all too good. He just has to leave them all on top.
He has too many mouths to feed here. Plays mouth to feed, makes a hippo.
Gerard is aftermathing it up.
Yeah. And Fujimura is looking a lot like he is going to be heading to a game 3. But he's got another big spell here. And that is a Cryptic Serpent.
For almost full retail, 6 mana. So,
Yeah.
investigating the Nissa to see exactly when the ultimate is happening.
So now do you just fire it off here and then just keep going to work with it next turn?
You can. One kind of interesting play Gerard can do is he can ultimate Nissa and then use the aftermath on feed to draw a bunch of extra cards.
Ooh. Plays a Cursed Minotaur. And yep, here we go. He's going to untap 2 of those lands. And attack with both of them. And the Shimmer Scale Drake, he's like, I've been waiting for this. I've had one job, and it's to absorb 5 points of damage.
Oh, and here we go.
Draw 4.
Draw 4.
Gerard's deck is sweet. You cannot deny that.
And Gerard passes the turn back to Fujimura, who, wishes he was living in a different cruel reality right now.
Had he resolved Cruel Reality, then things would be quite a bit different because he would have been already picked away at a lot of Gerard's creatures. But unfortunately, without it, Gerard is just stacking up resources turn after turn.
And Fujimura sends in the Cryptic Serpent. Gerard's at a very healthy 17 here. But still looking at a double block.
Yeah, I think Fujimura was trying to threaten Nissa to avoid any potential future ultimates. Wonder and Death could be some value.
Gets back his flyer and his serpent. And is able to have enough mana this time to play the serpent for 5 mana. Getting extra work out of the Wander and Death.
Yeah, it's a combo of sorts.
But Gerard still has a Planeswalker. Has had it for several turns, and that's never a good place to be when you're sitting across from that playing Magic. And really, I mean, he could be scrying to anything.
Yeah,
It's Gerard Fabiano.
There's no limit on what his 5-color deck that has access to all of its colors can do.
So another Exert there. Gets to go for another card. Serpent's just going to eat the Exert creature.
I think Gerard might be setting up an Electrify here.
Looks like he's got 2 of them. He's got electricity to spare. Yeah, it does take down the Serpent with Electrify. His hand is just stacked here. Wow.
Gerard
Plays a
tells-
Baleful Ammit.
Honored Hydra, Spring to Mind, Electrify, and Soul Stinger, which is, again, quite the collection of cards and a lot of power.
Yeah. Gerard really did the aftermath in this draft.
Oh, yeah. We've seen him fully cast 3 Aftermath cards. He's got a 4th in his hand.
He only cast half of one. He did discard that Insult to Injury.
True enough.
So there's Electrify. Fujimura's like, the Death Toucher? He's like, no, we're gonna take down the flyer this time. Gerard gets in, offers the Ammit in trade for the Scorpion. Takes 3 from the Minotaur, and then has another creature. And is that going to be it? Yes, it is. Fujimura scoops him up. We're going to get a game 3 here between Kazuyuki Fujimura and Gerard Fabiano. Okay, we also have a game 3 lined up between Oliver Ox and Hall of Famer Eric Froelich, and we're going to head over there and look at that. Oliver Ox, of course, having his best Pro Tour start in his, sort of long and intermittent Magic career. Someone who, used to see all the time at the Japanese Grand Prix. Although he's Australian, he was actually a fixture on the Japanese Grand Prix circuit because he was teaching English in Japan and would actually play test and hang out with a lot of the Japanese players. So there you see everyone sort of shifting into position as we get ready to bring you some more action. Swinging those cameras around. And there you see the CFB Ice jersey of Eric Froelich. And the white shirt and wedding band of Oliver Ox. Battlefield Scavenger in play for Oliver, who is red-black. And Initiate's Companion in play for the green-black Eric Froelich. And pick things up here on turn 3.
Eric did not follow up his Initiate's Companion with anything on turn 3 here.
In comes the Scavenger. He's going to exert it, which means he gets to rummage, gets to discard a card, and then draw a card. One of the neat things about this card when you have a handful of exert creatures is it triggers every time you exert a creature.
Yeah, the Battlefield Scavenger doesn't even have to be attacking or in
Right,
combat.
you could play it, attack with your Gustwalker, and rummage, which is great. Of course, if there's a Gustwalker in Oliver Ox's deck, that's probably not so great because he's 3-color then.
So neither player with a play on 3.
Wow.
Eric choosing not to trade Initiate's Companion for the Battlefield Scavenger, potentially because it's exerted, won't untap next turn, so he's got a free turn of attacks first.
All right. And there is Splendid Agony from Oliver Ox. Takes down the Initiate's Companion, puts a -1/-1 counter on Champion of Ronus also. Doesn't really stop you from exerting the Champion of Ronus, though.
No, it's funny how that play ended up where Eric's reason to attack after playing Champion of Ronus so he could untap a land and have Shed a Weakness up, but unfortunately that opened him up to Splendid Agony getting a little bit of extra value by putting a counter on the champion, though having Shed a Weakness in hand, of course, makes that -1/-1 counter less relevant. Now it's time to see if Eric can dump something large into play with Champion of Ronus. It's a fairly good card in a kind of green-black ramp deck.
Yeah, the Merciless Javelineer comes down for Oliver Ox. Kind of a sweet card if you're in the -1/-1 counter business.
Oliver playing the get to 1 card or fewer deck, Heckbent,
yeah.
as some people have called it. See like a Thresher Lizard in his hand, potentially. It's the kind of card that he likes to combine with Merciless Javelineer and get down to very few cards. Looks like a Consuming Ferocity, actually. So his deck is skewing a little bit aggressive.
Then we see a Cartouche of Ambition. I mean, I'm sorry, a
Ooh, what are we getting in here?
he exerts the champion. Oh, wow. Is that a Decimator Beetle?
It is.
The Decimator Beetle comes down, and he's like, Eric's like, let me show you a little something about -1/-1 counters.
Free Decimator Beetle is a pretty big game if Eric can spend the rest of his mana here. Let's see if he's got follow-up plays.
Well, there's the Cartouche. Puts a counter on the Merciless Javelineer. And if he gets to attack with that thing, it is going to be a huge swing for Eric Froelich. You see the Cartouche of Ambition.
And this is where Oliver really needs like a final reward or something along those lines. But unfortunately for Oliver, his hand is a Horror of the Broken Lands and that Consuming Fervor, and 3 lands. So he really needs to find a way to deal with that gigantic Decimator Beetle. It's going to be able to remove a counter from itself, also put a counter on one of Oliver's creatures, likely finishing off Merciless Javelineer, and attacking as a 5/6 lifelink with the Cartouche there. So Eric's kind of got most of his eggs in one basket, but it's a very resilient and sturdy basket.
Yeah, the lifelink on the Cartouche of Ambition just makes it such a backbreaker for a more aggressive deck. Looks like he's going to make the Consuming Fervor play here. Puts it on the Merciless Javelineer. Not really interested in putting more counters on the Decimator Beetle. He is. Says it cannot block. Gets -1/-1. Now attacks. He's going to exert that Battlefield Scavenger.
He definitely has to rummage through all the lands he's got in his hand.
Yep, discards a land. Draws. Couldn't quite see what it was. Looked like a red card.
But getting in for 8 here drops Eric to 10, but Cartouche of Ambition means that Eric is still just not that worried about his life total.
Yeah, I mean, he gets to swing for more than 25% of his starting life with that whenever he wants. Oh, and look at this. Fling from Oliver Ox. It looks like it's the next to last. That was the card he rummaged. And he is going to take out. He's going to sacrifice his creature and take out the Decimator Beetle.
Well, he's going to try.
He's going to try to, I should say. You did mention a card earlier that was in Eric Froelich's hand, Shed Weakness.
Shed is going to give the Decimator Beetle +2/+2 and remove one of the -1/-1 counters from it. So if this play works, Eric's going to be crushing Oliver Ox.
Oh, there's the Shed Weakness.
That was a huge swing because
That was a 3-for-1. It was Ancestral Recall for Eric Froelich.
Yeah, and it ended up getting the -1/-1 counter off additionally. So that's going to mean that Eric is going to get to attack for 5 points of lifelink damage here, put a -1/-1 counter on the Battlefield Scavenger, and then follow up with something else and be just really, really far ahead.
Actually, it was almost like a 4-for-1 because he discarded a card to that to the Merciless Javelineer to get the Decimator Beetle in range. Wow. Huge advantage there for Eric Froelich. We're gonna see Horror of the Broken Lands come down. But that doesn't seem like it's going to do enough. A Hooded Brawler joined the team for Eric Froelich last turn.
So Eric can attack, exert Hooded Brawler, attack with Decimator Beetle.
He can remove a counter from his Champion of Ronus.
And put a counter on the Horror, so he actually has the ability to attack with everything.
Yep, there you see it. Oh, he's considering killing the Battlefield Scavenger just to
it's possible.
clear, get a whole creature off the board. Yeah, he does. He says, I'm going to kill your battlefield scavenger. And the Horror of the Broken Lands can trade for the Hooded Brawler here if it wants to.
Yeah, but he's forced to block one of the 5 power creatures.
And Oliver Ox extends the hand. Eric Froelich, the Hall of Famer, he wins the match 2-1.
Blowing out both games. With the same card.
And we are going to see a Game 3 between Kazuyuki Fujimura and Gerard Fabiano. Gerard Fabiano with the crazy Aftermath deck. You know, we saw Spring to Mind, Insult to Injury, Mouth to Feed. So see what he does. Gifts of Paradise, letting him play both sides of any card he wants.
And it feels like a lot of this is a battle between Gerard and his mana base rather than Gerard and his opponent. Because Gerard's cards are undeniably powerful, for the most part. Miasmic Mummy, maybe not the 5-color deck, but he's not going to be guaranteed to be able to cast them. I mean, he's got a bunch of swamps and forests in his deck, and he's got, you know, a red-blue card. So,
yeah, a lot of times with a deck like this, it's Gift of Paradise or bust.
Yeah, and hopefully Gerard's not in that position. You know, you can still build a mana base with Evolving Wilds and whatnot that doesn't quite get that far, but it is there.
Get enough of the cycling lands. All right. So, Gerard Fabiano on the draw. You see, for example, does have a mountain in his deck.
Ooh, Shadowstorm Vizier, a key card in the blue-black cycling deck, which Fujimura looks like he's got kind of a version of. He's got a number of cycling cards, maybe not going all in, but part of the strength of the deck is it doesn't need to go all in order to have, you know, some good synergies like Shadowstorm Vizier.
Well, you know what? He's just going to cycle twice here and get in for 3, you know, sort of filtering through the top of his deck and getting a little extra damage in. And here is turn 3 for Gerard Fabiano. And Vizier's going to stay back.
Threatening to block and cycle. So it'll be interesting to see if Gerard attacks here. Also, who needs Gift of Paradise when you just draw Island, Swamp, Forest, Mountain?
Can he go full Wooburg on the first 5 turns?
Oh, we'll see if he can pull that off. But it's not clear that it's even going to be necessary this game.
So the trick here for Gerard is he'd like to attack and exert, draw a card here with the Watchful Naga, but the threat of cycling from Fujimura means he would be doing so into potentially a 2/4 creature.
So Gerard is actually a little restrained. No white cards in his deck, but he's got the other 4 colors.
Well, here comes Spring to Mind. And he waits patiently to see if there's a cancel coming from Fujimura, and Fujimura does cancel it. Little does he know that mountain is already in hand for Gerard.
And Gerard played out the turn the way he did on purpose, where he wanted to make it look like it was appealing to cancel. The Gerard doesn't really care if Spring gets canceled here. And Fujimura is kind of forced into it based on how much mana he left up, as we've frequently seen. So
there's a Shimmer Scale Drake after an attack for 1. And he did have the cycling card in hand had Gerard attacked. But there's Illusory Wrappings. And now the Watchful Naga is going to get in and get a card for Gerard.
And had Gerard not had Illusory Wrappings, then that Drake would have been a pretty big threat. But, 4 points of flying damage a turn plus whatever Fujimura could cycle. But with that Wrappings, Gerard gets to get in, get a card, and his life total is much safer.
See a sweet little card there in Gerard's hand that we might come into play later in the game, Haze of Pollen.
Yeah, that's an interesting addition.
Perfect card to discard to a Miasmic Mummy.
It's a good combo.
Discards a Forest. And Illusory Wrappings from Fujimura. That's what he discards. Very few cards in hand for the Japanese player here. Gets in for one. Oh.
Kefnet the Mindful is going to be a pretty big swing if this game is slow. Also, there's a kind of cool interaction that could come up here. Supernatural Stamina on the Shimmer Scale Drake, having it die and then come back no longer all wrapped up. So I really like this play.
Oh, here we go. And he's going to, the Supernatural Stamina is actually going to get to kill the mummy. Unless Gerard obviously has a trick.
Gerard might be forced to use the Haze of Pollen here to prevent Fujimura's Drake from dying. I actually think it's a good play because otherwise Fujimura gets a 3-4 and you lose your Miasmic Mummy. Casting Haze of Pollen is like putting a 2-2 into play that kills their 3-4, or at least keeps their 3-4 on 0-2.
And I think that's where Gerard has ended up.
This is just, again, this combat is just like, well, I didn't expect combats to go like this, but here we are.
Right, Gerard's expecting that, probably, the Drake steps in front and he just gets it into it, just as a chump blocker. But now with the stamina, he has the opportunity to actually... All right, Haze of Pollen. Fog.
All right, that plays.
Shake of the head from Fujimura.
You know you've got a good one, and your opponent frequently has to read your cards. Also, remember Gerard has Mind. 4 blue, draw 2 cards still in his graveyard. At some point, he might have opportunity to play that.
Ornery Kudu puts a counter on the Miasmic Mummy.
And had that Supernatural Stamina play worked, I think that Fujimura would be significantly ahead just on board. But without it, he's actually getting pressured here. Doesn't have a good blocker for Watchful Naga or Ornery Kudu, and needs to find something, though he gets to draw extra cards from Kefnet.
And then, how do you play with this card normally? I mean, do you find yourself picking up a land a lot of the time to try to get to 7?
You'll pick up a land near the end a lot of the time. You're probably not. You're just going to go all in on picking up lands right away, though. It's possible that Fujimura ends up in that direction.
He had his heart set on picking up a land, but you get to replay the land that turn, so that's why he. Normally, you actually get to draw the card and then decide if you're going to pick up that land or not.
I said that he couldn't draw the card first, then he will decide if he wants to return the land.
Oh, and you hear Gerard saying that.
Just upside for Fujimura.
Just take the land just after.
Oh yeah, I was just trying to help him out. He's nice.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No problem.
Okay.
Good guy, Gerard Fabiano.
Yeah, he's letting his opponent know that his card's a little better than he thought, actually.
I think it was just a matter of Fujimura knew he hadn't played a land that turn, and he was just kind of shortcutting.
Yeah. He did find looks like a River Serpent to cycle, and that will help this Vizier make a profitable block.
So exerts the Naga again.
Hold on.
Gerard did draw Electrify off of the Watchful Naga trigger, so he's got the opportunity to cast that Electrify before blockers here. Unfortunately for Fujimura, by throwing the Vizier in play, he might indicate he has a cycler, but I guess he'd make that block anyway.
See, other cards in hand for Gerard include Floodwaters. So yeah, he is going to play the Electrify. He's going to take down the Vizier, and unless there are 2 1-mana cyclers in hand for Fujimura, his 1/3 creature is going to die.
And Fujimura now have to decide whether he can find another one.
So basically, cycle Serpent to try to find Horror of the Broken Lands or some other 1-mana cycler.
Scarab Beast among the enticing options.
He doesn't want to play that game.
13,
No, especially since casting River Serpent here seems like it would be effective.
13, 15. 15. Go.
So Fujimura falls to 13. Looks like his draw was Cartouche of Ambition, which is pretty nice to get onto a Kefnet.
Yeah, if you can manage to swing it to the point where you can attack, that works out fairly well.
Plays a Heckma Sentinels.
Unfortunately for Fujimura, doesn't have quite enough mana to be able to use Kefnet and play the Sentinels, and he's worried about falling too far behind here.
We're getting perilously close to floodwater territory here.
And I think that's what might be what's happening.
Oh, no.
Oh.
He's just casting Mind. Fujimura could actually remind him that that's one of the few Aftermath cards that you can play as an instant.
Yes, if we're both players are, you know, in the spirit of cooperation here.
Go.
And Gerard passes the turn. Looked like he picked up another Aftermath card there. I couldn't quite see what it was.
Yeah, reduced to rubble.
Okay.
Not quite insult to injury, but still a card that could be effective, especially if Gerard can leave mana up and counter something with reduce. Fujimura is going to be pretty constrained here on what he can and can't do.
So there's the River Serpent. And it does hold down the ground pretty well here. Fujimura's at 13. Gerard at 15. There's an Evolving Wilds. The 5th in the cycle.
See if the Floodwaters, bouncing River Serpent and Heckma Sentinels could open the door for Gerard to attack for 6 damage. Not an insanely large amount of damage, but
You hear Fujimura, I guess, has a question about Heckma Sentinels.
it looks like Kefnet.
Kefnet, I'm sorry, yeah.
すいません。はい。ゲフネットの能力で、さっき言われたんですけど、
With
これっ
this,
てド
if
ロ
I
ー
put
した
this here,
後
I can tap
に
for 2 mana.
土地を戻すか選べるんですか？
はい、ドローした後に選べます。
あ、そうなんですか。でこれカードが土地だったとして、
So what do you think? I mean, I don't believe your Japanese is up to snuff, despite testing with Shuei Nakamura, but what do you think he was asking about there?
Potentially like the ordering on drawing and returning lands.
Okay. So you see Gift of Paradise on an Evolving Wilds.
Yeah, there we go.
Floodwaters returns 2 creatures. Everybody gets in. And exert the Watchful Naga for a card.
you're on 6.
He was asked, just double checking on how Kefnet worked in terms. You were right about that. And Fujimura's down to 7 here. Is there a way out for him? Is there a what's the plan?
Nominally on the board, if you just cast River Serpent again, Gerard can't attack. But Gerard has an Honored Hydra in hand, and he's going to be able to play Honored Hydra and have Reduce for Rebel fame, able to to counter something. Kefnet looked good when the game was slower, but Gerard has been able to play enough threats that Fujimura is not going to have enough time to just sit there drawing cards.
So there's the Hooded Hydra you mentioned. Gerard sort of hiding his blue mana on the Gift of Paradise for Reduce to Rubble. See, Fujimura is thinking about how do I deal with this 6/6 twice, because it does have Embalm. Comes back cheaper. Remind you of any older Magic cards at all?
Yeah, they'd be Roar of the Worm. The Roar of the Worm did cost 7 on its front side.
No, that's true. So he is holding Cartouche of Ambition here.
That is the kind of card that can swing things, especially with...
So he's going to start with Cartouche of Knowledge. And
Gerard's
Gerard's going to attempt to make him pay 3 more mana for that with Reduce.
Interesting. So by doing that, Gerard is giving Fujimura the option to not get a spell counter by paying 3, or by just letting it get countered. So usually you don't want to give your opponent the option, but maybe he wants to force him to not be able to activate Kefnet.
But instead, here comes Cartouche, takes down the Miasmic Mummy, and but no attack with the Serpent. Looking to do any trading with that card on his own terms as a blocker.
He would prefer not to trade it for the Hooded Hydra, but...
This is a lot of mana from Gerard Fabiano.
Gerard Nissa.
He did draw Nissa.
And that'll end the game here.
He is able... Wow. He's going to have more than enough loyalty. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's a loyalty 8.
So he can make 2 5/5 flyers. Well, if he attacks with everything, he's like slightly short of lethal here. The Hydra gets blocked there.
And lifelink is going to be a factor there, yep.
The Drake chumps one of the lands and falls down to 3. So the game's not literally over this turn, but Gerard is going to be able to force Fujimura to block the Honored Hydra. He can't afford to block the Ordinary Kudu as much as he would like to.
So even though that would bring him to 13. Yeah, no, that doesn't work. Yeah, he's coming to the same conclusion you did, Luis. He's going to trade the Serpent for half the Hydra.
6 up, yeah.
But he does gain 6 life.
5 to 10. 6 again, 3.
And he's going to fall to 3, it sounds like, at the end of all that. That's crazy. And Gerard still has Nissa, should somehow Fujimura drag this game out at all.
And even if Fujimura can play a sequence of blockers here, I don't think he's going to be able to beat Nissa in the long game. Also, reduce to Rubble, aftermathing the Rubble.
Wasn't this guy a 6/6 or no?
Yeah, this guy was a 6/6.
Oh, yeah.
Also, Gerard can, that Honored Hydra will be coming back soon enough, I suspect.
Got a Death Touch Scorpion there, but that's...
You can trade for the Ornery Kudu, and then Gerard can flashback Honored Hydra, also Rubble to make it so Fujimura has less mana to work with on the next turn.
Yeah, there's your Hydra. It's going to embalm it. Scry's 2 with Nissa. There you go. He pushed a card finally.
Oh, well, that is pretty lucky. Got to get, value off your scries.
I mean, if you were just going to draw the cards anyway, it's not really that good. And then he is going to tap down.
Probably all the swamps.
Yeah, two blacks and a blue, as you heard him say. Another Watchful Naga. The Kudu is going to trade. And that is going to be it for Kazuyuki Fujimura. Gerard Fabiano wins. He goes to 8-1 in this tournament and is in, a pretty good spot here at the start of day 2. And, maybe looking to add a second Pro Tour top 8 to his resume. His last one was back in Boston in teams. So it's been a while. Welcome back to the booth, Brian David Marshall and Luis Galvarez. What did you... the draft we watched this morning, it seemed a little slower than maybe the drafts we saw yesterday. Do you think that players reacted overnight to the speed of the format?
I think that some of the players may have looked at it and said, well, I know a lot of other players are looking for these really fast decks, and I don't really like to do that, so I'm going to try to draft a little bit higher than that. Might have just been the cards. The draft seemed a little messy. No one's deck seems great. Yeah. And that's one of the features of a draft pod is that you don't need to have the best deck of all draft pods, just your draft pod.
All right. Well, we've got 2 more rounds of draft action coming up. We're going to send it right now back up to the desk.
Maria Bartholdi here at the news desk. I've got some results for you from Team Genesis. Lucas Blohan falling to Zen Takahashi, goes to 6-3. Martin Dang wins, improves to 5-3-1. Michael Machers over Yuya Watanabe, 7-2. Seth Manfield also improving to 7-2 over Magnus Lanto, the former Magic Online champ. Martin Mueller also wins his match over Josh Cho, moves to 8-1, a fabulous record for him. Brad Nelson also victorious, moves to 7-2. That's 5 out of 6 members of Team Genesis now winning their last round matches. Great records for the entire team. Now we've got another feature for you. Rich Hagan is over at the wall with Ian Duke. So if you want to improve your draft game, we've got to look at some more draft archetypes for you.